next stop on the F1 calendar is the Singapore Grand Prix, and the F1 governing body has officially announced that the parts that were on the Porsche car from last season were indeed legal. Now, this has come as multiple teams put in complaints about the Porsche car and the legality of it, specifically to do with parts that were located on the rear corner of the car, and they were feeling like it was actually more to do with controlling the temperature of the tyres, more so than actually just controlling the airflow through the car. The F1 governing body has concluded that the parts that were on the rear corner had no effect on the tyre temperatures, and it was strictly just an aerodynamic advantage that they gained by using parts in that rear corner. Now, while Porsche are happy that this case is now behind them and that they have proven that the car they had from last year was indeed legal, this has not gone down though well with the team full stop anyway, because Porsche actually removed all of those parts on the rear corner subject to this whole investigation. And the investigation kind of started to hit a bit of a headway during the winter break. So the Porsche team developed their car not around the parts that they had done so well to develop. Meaning if they were to put those parts back onto the car at the rear corner, they can do, but it means then again restructuring a whole lot of the car. So it's not something they're happy about, as they've had to use money and resources to remove those parts and develop something else. Now they have to spend it all and put more resources in to put it back on again. Taking a look at how things are going on the track though, and Porsche showed good pace in Singapore. Of course, Porsche and Ferrari both brought upgrades for the last round of the season at the Chinese Grand Prix, and now that they've had an opportunity to bed them in a little bit, they're definitely starting to put out some performance, and Porsche on the streets of Singapore were very much in contention. McLaren continued to show rapid race pace as they have done all season, and critically, that's going to be the area where McLaren are going to try and exploit both Porsche and also Ferrari, who on this weekend are also keeping those two teams in perfect honesty. Red Bull are having major short-run issues. While their race pace is looking very competitive, that's not going to be good if you can't overtake around a street track, and you need to have a good qualifying in order to do that. And right now, it's not quite working for them. And lastly, for BMW, they're actually impressing again on a Friday. Of course, remember that George Russell had a brilliant qualifying at the Chinese Grand Prix and could have possibly scored points on for BMW, who desperately need them. However, that wasn't the case. But if they can have a good qualifying here, it's a lot harder to overtake, so it might just give them a chance. Yo, what's going on guys? It is Foxydude here, and welcome back to a brand new video, another episode of the F1 journey for you guys today here on the channel. Today we're here for the Singapore Grand Prix, and if you guys end up enjoying today's video, feel free to drop it a like and subscribe if you are new around here to the channel. Let's get cracking with this race weekend though. One of my favourites on the F1 journey calendar. I love Singapore, I love the country, I love the people, I love the track, and that's biased because I've been there. But now, let's get straight into the F1 journey though. So the first lap here in Q1 instantly felt comfortable with the car on the track, and it definitely felt a lot more planted as it has done throughout any other races. And when we go P2 on our banker lap with the fastest first and final sector, that's definitely something to be happy about. On the second flying lap here, we're going now down towards the final set of chicane corners here. As we go through these complex of corners, we've got to be careful that the back end doesn't step out here, because it can do, but we are a second up on our previous best lap, and that is going to be pole position. So let's have a look then and see how the grid is going to shape up for the Singapore Grand Prix. It's our first pole position of the season. It's a 124.757, and the first time that we're taking pole position in the Porsche. Sam put in an excellent qualifying session, and he was the one that was challenging me all the way, and he set a lap time just a tenth of a second slower than myself to qualify on the front row, his best qualifying of the season as well. Restarts in third for Porsche, 0.3 of a second off my pole lap, while the two McLarens line up fourth and fifth, both 0.4 of a second off the pace. Hamilton starts P6 as he finishes half a second off the full-time pace there. Ollie Behrman with a great qualifying session for Aston Martin in P7 ahead of George Russell, who does get a good qualifying in for BMW yet again, starting P8. Alex Albon, the best placed Jaguar driver, starting in P9, a second off the pace, with Max Verstappen lining up P10, a second 2 off the pace, or 1.1 off the pace. Liam Lawson starts in P11, 1.3 off the pace, a massive 8/10 between himself and his own teammates. While the two Mercedes come up next of Antonelli and Valtteri Bottas, 12th and 13th. Lando Norris with yet another rough qualifying session in P14 for Red Bull, and that's not going to make things easy when they do have good race pace. Carlos Sainz starts 15th ahead of Hülkenberg in P16 with Daniel Ricciardo in the middle of a Renault sandwich. He's P17 and Vettel is P18. Gasly, another tricky qualifying session in the Red Bull, starts 19th, while Isaac Hadjar struggled to impress just like George Russell did. He starts P20. Alright then, we're on the grid here for the start of the Singapore Grand Prix, and we're going to do this strategy a little bit different. We're going to start on the hard tyres, and then we're going to go to the mediums at the end. It's a little bit of a bold call, but it's time to do something different here as we're on the grid now. Ready to go. We've got the 5 lights. They are off and the race is on, and it's a cracking start from Sam off the front row of the grid. He leads the Singapore Grand Prix, leaves us for dust. We'll try and go around the outside, braking late to turn 1, but we made contact with the Ferrari, and that's going to get noted there by the F1 governing body. And now as we make our way down in towards the end of the first part of the lap here, we get a great run though through turn 4. Now we can have a go here at Sam down towards Raffles Boulevard. This is a chance to get the place back here. Sam covers the inside line, covers it as much as he possibly can. We'll brake as late as we possibly can, just about keep the car confined to the track limit. Back into the lead of the Singapore Grand Prix. A lovely fighting section there between myself and Sam, and he still tries to go for it as we go a little bit deep on the brakes, but now we've got to get the car balanced and set up right for the long race ahead now as we make our way down in towards the heart of the middle sector here and towards the bridge that we now come, and we can start to try and get a better feel for these hard compound tyres. We've been doing laps here on nice brand spanking new soft tyres. Now we need to get up to speed with full tanks of fuel and the hard compound tyres. As Sam here now does look like he's a little bit close going down in towards the end of the middle sector here, but not to be. And now it's time for the new long drag, because there is no more little fiddly section to deal with, if that's even a word. Now it's just this long straight here, which is a DRS zone, so that is going to be important to note later on here. But we break now down in towards the last chicane here, and that is job done for the first lap here of this race. We are ahead of the Ferrari. We maintain position off the grid despite the fact that we lost it. We fought back for it, and now we find ourselves in good position here. DRS is enabled. There are 4 places to make moves here, so it's going to get interesting. But let's have a look at that start though, and you can see there instantly the reaction time that Sam was able to get versus myself is just second to none. He deserved to lead going into turn 1. I tried to brake late around the outside and swoop back through turn 1 and then claim the inside for turn 2, but I actually just made a little bit of an error and a misjudgment, and it meant that I wasn't able to keep the place here. But then as we go down in towards turn 4 here, I got a great run through there. I was able to brake so much later, and that was able to allow me to be right on the back of the Ferrari, and he initially just sort of jinked, he covered the inside line initially through that sort of left-handed kink. And then again, it was very difficult actually, quite complicated in terms of the move here. But this is on board with Sam now. This is how he had it for his start. Look at that, just insane reaction times straight off the line there and in towards turn 1. I tried to have a go here, and that's where, fair enough, he does wave his hand there at the contact. But down in towards turns 2 and 3, you can see that everything is looking fine, and he's actually pulled away. This was the crucial bit here, this run into turn 4. The amount later that I was able to brake, the more on the curb that I was able to do, and this is what I was on about here. So I went initially for the inside. Sam then just about covers it off very slightly. It's a very cheeky little turn there towards there, because he hasn't fully committed himself to covering that inside line through that little kink on the right hand side there. But he just did enough to basically phase me off a little bit, and then that allowed him to stay in front until I was able to then sweep around the outside. But onto lap 2 of the Grand Prix here, things are not going to be settled just yet, because the DRS is now enabled down the back straight here towards Raffles Boulevard, and this is where now Sam in the Ferrari can get a great run with DRS. He has had a great run with DRS. It's going to be side by side down into Raffles. Sam trying to fight back here in the Singapore Grand Prix to retake the lead. Not to be though. We're able to hold it off in this race. That's not quite the way to take that corner, especially if you want to keep your front corner on the car. But for me, that's clearly not the case here. Now, a little bit further back here, we're on board here with Verstappen, who's having a go here at George Russell, around the outside, of the exit of the middle sector now. A little bit of an unusual place to make a move here, but now there is a second, should I say a fourth DRS zone that's coming up now for Verstappen to make this move stick. He has got the run, and he does take the position away from Russell in this Grand Prix. Lovely overtake there, as you can see the rest of the field flying on through, but Russell now does indeed try to come back at Verstappen here. Around the outside into Raffles, the job is done for George Russell. He does make the overtake stick, but Verstappen, though, is doing a great job here of just fighting against this BMW driver and not allowing him to stick it out. Verstappen takes on Russell, and Verstappen's the man that comes out on top in that duel, and that is all fine. Lap 5 of the Grand Prix. We're betting ourselves in out front. Now for Sam, he's got problems here because the McLarens are coming at him quite quickly here. Charles Leclerc goes around the outside of Sam into Raffles and takes away second place. Crucially, the two McLarens are running on the medium compound tyres. The rest of us are on the hard tyres, so that is something to be aware of. As for Reece, though, what he needs to be aware of is the Ferrari of Hamilton that goes right around the outside here. And I was trying to check on my radio, actually, if Reece had a problem here, because he's lost out to both McLarens at the start. Remember, he started third in this race. Both McLarens have passed him. Behrman's passed him, Hamilton's passed him, and finally here on lap 10, he's starting to show, oh, bloody hell, he's trying to show up a little bit because now that was a huge slide on the back end there for Reece as he got the DRS here, but after being passed by Hamilton, he's now managed to pick up the pace and get back past him again. But lap 11 of the Grand Prix now, we have an issue here because Ollie Behrman, the man that was doing such a great job for Aston Martin in, I think it was P6, P5, something like that, is unfortunately not finishing anywhere because he is out of the Singapore Grand Prix with a mechanical problem on the Aston Martin there, and that's a real shame because he genuinely was performing nicely. As Hamilton here on lap 11 is trying to go for a move on Reece, and he wasn't going to go for a move on Reece. In fact, he was nowhere near it. He's just dropped it on the curb on his own, and all the work that Lewis Hamilton is going to have to do now in this Grand Prix because every single car is going to go past him. He just about was hanging on to the back of Reece in the fight for what would have been 5th place, if now my maths is properly correct, and it is. And now, all of a sudden, he's going to have a real fight on his hands to get into the points. And now we've got a virtual safety car on lap 12. That's not to do with Hamilton. That's to do with the other Aston Martin that slows down towards the Padang Grandstand area. And now, all of a sudden, we have a strategical decision to make. And I've gone ahead and made it. The virtual safety car is out. I am going to pit and take a free pit stop, kind of, in this Grand Prix. And I'm going to swap to a 2-stop strategy. The tyre degradation is high around Singapore, despite the fact it's a 1-stop race. That means that if I now, on this 2-stop strategy, it now means that I can run 2 brand new sets of medium compound tyres to the end of this race. That means for me, there is no more tyre management. It is now for me, for the rest of this race, push as hard as you bloody can and see how you get on. It's a risk because I've just sacrificed track position, but if I've seen anything so far from this season of the F1 journey, is that fresh tyres are key. So what am I going to do? Just have fresh tyres for the rest of the race versus my competitors. So, fight number 1, it's Max Verstappen versus myself. Through the bridge we go. This is going to be a key one here. We've got DRS position coming up, but I don't want that. We're going to just send it down the inside of Verstappen, cut off the exit line. Then we'll have the DRS for 2 runs now because there's only 1 detection zone for those 2 DRS points, and that's job done. Lap 15 of the Grand Prix. Now we're on the back of my cousin Reece here in the fight for theoretically 4th, but of course we're trying to aim for a bit more than that, and with the DRS here we can now overtake him, and now we're up into 4th place on the road, and Reece doesn't actually fight it, so I very much appreciate that. 2 different strategies in this Grand Prix, and there's the second bite of DRS here to run with. The 2 McLarens are out front. We are now currently in a fight to try and chase after the rest here. Now this is what I was worried about, and it's something that the VSC has allowed me to avoid. Traffic. Now, the McLarens are on the medium compound tyres. There goes Leclerc to overtake Hülkenberg. Now, Oscar Piastri needs to pass Vettel. But look at the train that the 2 McLarens are in. The medium compound tyres couldn't go as long as the hard tyres that all of us started on. If the VSC didn't come out, I would have just stayed and got out longer. But, as you can see now, all of a sudden, this is causing McLaren a headache because there is Leclerc boxing in this fight between Antonelli, Bottas, Russell, whoever else is in there. And for me, I can just push now because the VSC hasn't affected me in this race. And all of a sudden, I'm now facing up to the back of Sam in a repeat of the last time around. But this time, we've got fresh medium tyres and Sam has got heavily worn hard compound tyres. And in fact, I think he'll be in at the end of this lap. Indeed, he is. So that means we can just keep on pushing. Speaking of pushing, this is what's going on further back here. Leclerc is stuck behind Kimi Antonelli, but Antonelli here, I don't think is going to be fighting this one for too much longer, and he doesn't. So there goes the position for Kimi Antonelli, and he's going to now come into the pits here. That's going to leave this fight out front here. Sam versus Leclerc for second place. Now Sam, he tries to go to the inside line. Leclerc covers it, and Sam goes around the outside of Charles Leclerc. And crucially, the traffic that the McLarens found themselves in, nice drift, the traffic that the McLarens found themselves in cost them time, so it meant that their fresh tyres couldn't be utilised. Sam, remember, is on fresh medium compound tyres. The McLarens are now the ones on the hard tyres, so all of a sudden, it's roles reversed, and we're the ones with the advantage. But for me, I'm now coming in for my second stop of the race, and because they were fighting it in traffic, I'm trying to see if I can get out in front of my rivals, but worst case scenario, I'm on fresher tyres again, so I can just go at them. So let's see what happens here. Coming out the pits now of this race, that's the second time that we're pitting, and now as we go through in towards turns 1, 2, and 3, we are just about going to come out in front of the Ferrari of Sam, so much so that he's right there. Literally couldn't have timed that perfectly, because there is the Ferrari of Sam. Here we are now, back out in the lead of the Grand Prix on fresh medium compound tyres, about 6-7 laps younger than those that's on the Ferrari. So it does mean that while he's going to close in through this stretch of the track, we can now just push onwards and make up for lost ground and pull away in this race. Lap 24 of the Grand Prix here. We're on board with Kimi Antonelli that's trying to fight hard against Verstappen. It's Bottas, sorry, fighting against Verstappen. Bottas goes right around the outside there of Max Verstappen. Do you know what? Fair play. I think that's actually Antonelli. I can't lie. I don't know which one it is. I haven't got a clue. Lap 25 of the Grand Prix, we've got a yellow flag out there. One of the McLarens has stopped, and it's Oscar Piastri that has stopped at the hairpin on the exit of the bridge, and he is out of the Singapore Grand Prix. What has happened to Piastri? It's an engine failure that's caused him to slow down to the side of the track. That is a disaster for McLaren. That's a disaster for Oscar Piastri, and he is out of this race. And now on to lap 26 of the Grand Prix. We have a fight on our hands. It was Antonelli versus Verstappen. My apologies. But the fight here is Kimi Antonelli versus George Russell. And that move was nicely done by Antonelli, but back comes George Russell here on lap 28, tries to go to that inside line, but every driver is covering it off, and Antonelli actually didn't even allow Russell to get a sniff at going around the outside of him. Good work from Antonelli. Here comes Russell to try and have another scrap here, but Russell not able to get near Antonelli. Kimi putting on a defensive masterclass here to fend off against George Russell, but if there's one thing that we're doing in this Grand Prix is not fending off nice slide from anybody, because for the first time in the F1 Journey season number 13, for the first time driving for Porsche, we're now exiting the final few corners for a perfect race for us this weekend. The Singapore Grand Prix never disappoints for me, and it brings me success once again in Singapore. It's the first time that we're tasting success with Porsche, and it's the first time that we're going to be doing it at the Singapore Grand Prix in the colours of Porsche, and I couldn't be any happier in that race. It was definitely a tricky Grand Prix, but it was one that we executed to perfection, excuse the hiccup in there, and as you can see, we managed to get the win. And ultimately, the main reason for the race victory was to do with the virtual safety car and the gamble of the strategy swap, because it meant that I was able to pit for fresh medium compound tyres, and because it was the VSC that was out, it meant that the gap, or the time that I lost in the pits, was a lot less than it would have been normally. That meant that the fresh tyres that I had on my mediums at that first pit stop in the Grand Prix, I was, well, you saw, it took from, what was it, lap 13 to lap 17 or something like that, for me to catch right back up to the Ferrari of Sam, overtake him before he then came into the pits, or maybe it was lap 11 or 12, something like that. Anyway, you can see the point though. It meant that that entire pit stop that I lost under the VSC took me double, or took me half as long, less time to actually gain it all back again. And that was the key thing. If the VSC hadn't have come out, would I have won the Singapore Grand Prix? I feel like I probably could have, but it definitely would have been a hell of a lot closer, because ultimately I would have been pitting the same time as the Ferrari of Sam. I would have been in that traffic as well. I would have also had to have had a fight with Charles Leclerc and overtaken him. So it definitely wouldn't have been as clear-cut and as simple either way around, really. But ultimately, I took a gamble and it's paid off. For Sam, though, finally, he has a good race weekend this season. He gets his first podium, I believe, for Ferrari this year, and he finishes just under 12 seconds off the pace. And as I say, the gap is so big, literally because I had fresh tyres and I could basically do quali laps the whole way round. Charles Leclerc finishes in third for McLaren. Not a lot more that Leclerc probably could have done. McLaren opted to start with the mediums and then go to the hards. Ultimately, that just meant that they were going to get sent out in traffic. So Leclerc got held up, and it meant those fresh tyres that he had on, he just couldn't use them. He was stuck in traffic, and even after Sam had pitted and then came out behind, that's when Leclerc overtook Antonelli. Well, that's pointless at that point. So it just made things difficult for him, and that's why he finishes 26 seconds off the pace. As for Rees, a disappointing start to the race, and he'll be disappointed in general to start third and finish fourth, but he did recover it quite nicely. And annoyingly for Rees, if he had another lap or two, he would have been in DRS range of Leclerc and probably could have passed him to get back on the podium again. Just a little bit too little too late, really, for Rees on that one. Now, can we give a shout out to Lando Norris, because Norris started 14th in this Singapore Grand Prix. I didn't catch any of Norris's moves in this race, and I feel bad for not doing so, but the guy starts 14th and he finishes in 5th, 35 seconds off the race win. Excellent drive from Lando Norris. Excellent drive from Bottas, because he started in 13th on the road. So maybe it was Bottas versus Verstappen, because Bottas overtook Max. I can't remember. But anyway, he finished in P6 after starting P13. Max Verstappen finishes 7th for Audi. Not a bad job in the office for Verstappen. And Kimi Antonelli finishes in P8 for Mercedes. But it has finally happened, ladies and gentlemen. BMW are finally back in the points. George Russell with 9th on the road for BMW. What a drive from him. And he finally breaks the duct for BMW. They didn't score a point last season, and they were pointless so far this season until now, because Russell gets them into the points, and Vettel also fought back well to finish in P10 for Renault. We did get the fastest lap of the race, but again, points don't matter in that circumstance. Looking at the second half of the table now, Hülkenberg finishes in 11th for Renault. Lewis Hamilton recovered to P12 after his nightmare spin, but ultimately that spin has cost him a hell of a lot of points, and that's going to be a costly one in the Drivers' Championship that we'll look at very shortly. Ricciardo, 13th, ahead of Hadjar, who finishes in 14th, and Albon down in P15. Pierre Gasly finishes in 16th for Red Bull, and Sainz has a miserable one in P17. Liam Lawson couldn't really do much either, finishes in 18th place, and unfortunately for Piastri and for Behrman, the two of them failed to finish. Let's go and have a look at the Drivers' Championship and see how that has changed now after the Singapore Grand Prix. And for the first time this season, we are now the Drivers' Championship leader for Porsche. 69 points to our name. Some would say that's lucky. We are now ahead of Charles Leclerc at the top of the championship. So myself and Leclerc are separated by 10 points in the championship. Leclerc has 59 points. We're on 69 points. The previous championship leader, Lewis Hamilton, drops down to third in the championship. He's on 56 points. He stays on the 56 points he was at, and he's 13 points off the top of the championship. Oscar Piastri is fourth for McLaren. He also failed to score, but he's only 24 points off the top of the championship, so plenty of points still to fight for. Sam moves up to 5th in the Drivers' Championship for Ferrari, making his way up the order now. He's on 36 points, leaving him only 33 points behind in the Drivers' Championship, so he's definitely getting himself back into contention slightly, and from where he was initially from Hamilton at one stage, his teammate, or his new teammate now, he's only 20 points behind him, so there is room to fight back. Bottas is 6th in the championship on 61 points. And then we've got Lando Norris, 7th in the championship with 30 points. Rees, the Drivers' Champion so far, and the reigning Drivers' Champion, is down in P8 on 24 points. 45 points off the Drivers' Championship lead. And as I say, if Rees wins the next Grand Prix in Qatar, which is the next race, and I DNF from it, okay, sure, other drivers will take ahead in the championship, but that means that the gap between me and Rees would just drop to, what, 20 points? 20 points, if my maths is, 20 points. So it's, anything can happen. Carlos Sainz and Ollie Behrman both didn't score in the Singapore Grand Prix, but maintained their positions in the Drivers' Championship, 9th and 10th, both on the 12 points. And as I've already said, the Qatar Grand Prix is where we're going to next. Now, looking at the Constructors' Championship, a lot of different swaps to have and be said about. So let's talk about them, shall we? McLaren are still top top of the championship, they haven't actually moved in their positions, but there has been maneuvers elsewhere. So we in the Porsche have now overtaken Ferrari for second in the championship. We're on 93 points, while Ferrari sits on 92 points. But as you can see, the top 3 teams in the Constructors' Championship are separated by just by 12 points between the top 3. So it's super close, super tight, anything can happen. Now, in the little fight between 4th and 5th in the championship, Mercedes have now overtaken Red Bull for that position in the championship. Mercedes have got 36 points, Red Bull have 34. Audi picked up a couple of points, and they're now on 20 points, and have built themselves a small buffer between themselves and Aston Martin, who stick to 12 points. Renault, though, are closing the gap on them because they scored another point today with Sebastian Vettel, leaving them with 10 points. And for the first time in a very, very long time, BMW are not the team sat at the bottom of the championship because they gained themselves 2 points, which means they are now 9th in the championship on 2 points, and Jaguar are now the team, unfortunately, sat rock bottom with just the 1 solitary point. But that does now mean that every single constructor has scored a point so far this season. But that is it for the F1 Journey Singapore Grand Prix. Let's get straight into the post-race notebook and see what the teams and drivers had to say after this race. Take a look at the post-race notebook for the Singapore Grand Prix. Tom gets his first win in the red and silver of Porsche as he started from pole position and fought back against Sam to finish on the top step of the podium. Speaking of the Ferrari driver, he managed to finish in P2, fighting off against the 2 McLarens in a tense battle between the 3 of them to finish second place, whilst Charles Leclerc kept up his strong start to the season, finishing in P3. Let's start things off with Porsche, and they've gone ahead and credited Tom's VSC call, and they've also praised Reese's fight back in the Grand Prix and all of their hard efforts. In the Grand Prix, the virtual safety car was deployed early on into the stint, and while it wasn't in a position for the hard or the medium runners to make their first stops, Tom, starting on the hard tyres, decided to go onto a 2-stop strategy and get on a set of medium tyres, and then put another set of mediums later on in the race. It turned out to be the right call, and the pure pace he was able to unleash was enough to get him the victory. As for Reese, he started in P3 but dropped back down the order due to some problems in the opening stint of the race. But he fought his way back up ahead of Hamilton and then passed the McLaren of Piastri and Behrman, who also DNF'd in the Grand Prix, to finish in P4. Now, Nico Rosberg believes that George Russell is the best man to lead the team going forward. This is after George Russell put in an impressive Singapore Grand Prix display to finish in P9 and finally get points on the board for BMW. Rosberg has been full of praise of Russell's mentality since joining the team, as he knows full well that BMW are not in a position to be fighting for anything more than scraps, and at the point of, for the driver's perspective, that's not something that they know that they can keep for so long. But with George's mentality, they know that he can help fight them all the way to the top. And speaking of fightbacks, it's Mercedes-Benz that also had a great fight back in this race. Starting P12 and also P13 on the grid, they were able to get a double point scoring finish, with Bottas finishing in P6 ahead of Antonelli, who finished in P8. It was a strong display for the team, and Toto Wolff was happy with the way that both drivers performed. But that is it for the Singapore Grand Prix. Hope you guys have enjoyed the video. If you have, feel free to drop it a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new around here as well. And I'll catch you guys for the next round, which is the Qatar Grand Prix. Take care all. Peace.